The alarm bells rang through the human ship defiant as Captain Marcus Reed stared at the massive forms appearing on his screen. The Ravak war vessels emerged from hyperspace like giant metal predators, their dark hulls bristling with weapons that could tear his ship apart in seconds. Marcus had heard the stories about these creatures, how they moved like one mind across a dozen bodies, how they never retreated and never showed mercy to their enemies. "Captain, we have 12 Ravak destroyers moving into attack formation," reported his tactical officer Tom. The young man's voice shook slightly as he spoke. Everyone on the bridge knew what this meant. The Ravak Empire had claimed this system first, and humans were the intruders here. Marcus gripped his command chair and watched the alien ships arrange themselves in a perfect circle around his small fleet. 3 human vessels against 12. Ravak warships was not good odds by any measure. He had come to the Theta sector to establish a mining operation on the rich mineral world below, but it seemed the Ravak had the same idea. On the lead Ravak vessel, War Prime Keth felt the collective consciousness of his squadron flow through his mind. His warriors were ready for battle, their thoughts focused and sharp like the edge of a blade. The humans had built their reputation on chaos and unpredictability, fighting in ways that made no sense to civilized species. They were dangerous because they refused to follow the rules of war that every other race accepted. Keth opened the communication channel to the human ships. His voice came out as a series of clicks and growls that the translation systems converted into human speech. "Human vessels, you have entered Ravak territory. Withdraw immediately or face destruction." Marcus heard the alien voice and felt his crew tense around him. He had studied the Ravak military protocols during his training. They never bluffed and they never gave second warnings. But he also had his orders from Earth Command. This system contained rare metals that humanity needed for their expansion into the Outer Rim. "Ravak ships, this system is unclaimed by galactic law. We have as much right to be here as you do," Marcus replied. He kept his voice steady, even though his heart was racing. Behind him, his weapons officer Lisa was already charging the ships. Plasma cannons. The 2 fleets faced each other in the cold darkness of space, neither willing to back down. The tension stretched like a wire about to snap when suddenly new contacts appeared on both their sensors. Massive ships were dropping out of hyperspace all around them, ships that belonged to neither human nor Ravak forces. "Sir, I'm reading 47 vessels," Tom called out. "They're consortium ships, multiple species, all heavy cruisers and battleships." Marcus felt his blood turn cold. The consortium was the alliance of older galactic races that had ruled space for thousands of years. They saw both humans and Ravak as dangerous upstarts who threatened their careful order. If the consortium was here in force, it meant they had decided to solve 2 problems at once. The lead consortium vessel opened communications to both fleets. The voice that came through was smooth and cold, belonging to a Veltar admiral. "Attention human and Ravak forces. By order of the Galactic Consortium, you are both declared hostile to galactic peace. Surrender immediately and prepare to be taken into custody." Keth felt the shock ripple through his squadron's shared consciousness. The consortium had never moved so boldly before. They usually worked through politics and economics, not direct military action. But here they were with enough firepower to destroy both fleets twice over. Marcus stared at his tactical display as the consortium ships moved into position. They were arranging themselves to catch both human and Ravak forces in a crossfire. There would be no escape for either side if this turned into a battle. "Captain," Lisa whispered, "the Ravak ships are moving." Marcus watched as the alien vessels began to shift their formation. Instead of maintaining their attack posture against the humans, they were turning to face the consortium fleet. War Prime Keth was making the same calculation that Marcus was. Alone, neither force could break through the consortium blockade. Together, they might have a chance. The communication channel crackled to life again. This time it was Keth's voice speaking directly to the human captain. "Human commander, it appears we face a common enemy. The consortium seeks to destroy us both." Marcus looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. They were all young people, volunteers who had signed up to explore the galaxy and build new homes for humanity. They did not deserve to die here because some ancient alien council had decided that humans were too dangerous to live. War Prime Keth, I propose a temporary alliance. We combine our forces to break through their lines, Marcus said. He could hardly believe the words coming out of his mouth. A few minutes ago, he had been ready to fight these aliens. Now he was asking them for help. Agreed, human commander. Transmit your tactical frequencies. We will coordinate our attack, Keth replied. The next few minutes were chaos as both fleets worked frantically to establish communication protocols. Human and Ravak computer systems had never been designed to work together, but desperate engineers on both sides found ways to make the connections work. The consortium admirals seemed amused by their efforts. How touching. The two most violent species in the galaxy working together at last. It changes nothing. You will all be destroyed here today. Marcus felt anger burn in his chest. These ancient races thought they could decide who lived and who died in the galaxy. They had grown comfortable in their power, believing that their superior numbers and technology made them invincible. Today, they would learn that sometimes the most dangerous enemy was the one you underestimated. All ships. Prepare for battle, Marcus ordered. Around him, the bridge crew moved with practiced efficiency. Weapons powered up, shields came online, and engines prepared for combat maneuvers on the Ravak ships. War Prime Keth felt his warriors' bloodlust rising through their shared consciousness. They were ready to show these arrogant consortium fools what happened when they threatened the children of the Hive. The battle for Theta Sector was about to begin, and the galaxy would never be the same. The space around Theta Sector exploded into light and fire as three different fleets clashed in the darkness. Human ships darted between the larger vessels like angry wasps, their smaller size allowing them to avoid the heavy weapons that the consortium forces brought to bear. The Ravak vessels moved in perfect coordination, each ship knowing exactly where its companions would be at every moment. Captain Marcus Reed watched his tactical display as the battle unfolded around them. The consortium had numbers and firepower, but they had not expected their enemies to work together. Their formation was designed to trap two separate forces, not to handle a coordinated attack from allies who could cover each other's weaknesses. Ravak destroyer moving to support us, called out his weapons officer Lisa as she fired another volley at a consortium cruiser. The alien ship had taken position behind the Defiant, using its heavier armor to absorb enemy fire while the human vessel struck at exposed weak points on his ship. War Prime Keth felt the tactical situation flow through his consciousness like water. His squadron moved as extensions of his will, each vessel taking its assigned role in the greater pattern. The humans fought with the wild creativity that made them so feared throughout the galaxy. They attacked from unexpected angles and used maneuvers that no sane pilot would attempt. The consortium forces were beginning to falter. Their commanders had trained for centuries to fight disciplined battles against organized enemies. They did not know how to handle opponents who combined Ravak precision with human chaos. Every time they adjusted their formation to counter one threat, the other allies would exploit the opening. Dr. Lisa Park worked frantically at her science station, trying to establish better communication with the Ravak vessels. As the ship's xenobiologist, she had studied their language and culture, but speaking with them in the middle of a battle was something else entirely. The translation systems kept breaking down under the stress of combat. "Captain, I'm getting clearer signals from the Ravak mind speaker," she reported. "They're trying to coordinate something big." Marcus nodded as he watched a human frigate execute an impossible spinning maneuver to avoid a consortium plasma beam. The move should have torn the ship apart, but somehow the pilot held it together long enough to slip behind cover. That was the human advantage. They could do things that violated all common sense and somehow make them work. Mind-Speaker Thax focused his thoughts across the battlefield, reaching out to touch the alien consciousness of the human ships. The humans did not have the shared mental connection that bound Ravak society together, but their individual minds burned with fierce determination. They were fighting not just for survival, but for the right to exist in a galaxy that saw them as a threat. The first major breakthrough came when a combined human Ravak assault team managed to disable one of the consortium's heavy battleships. Human Marines had used their small fighters to slip past the ship's defenses, while Ravak warriors provided covering fire with surgical precision. Once inside, the human soldiers created chaos in the enemy ship's corridors while Ravak boarding. Pods delivered shock troops directly to critical systems. War Prime Keth felt satisfaction flow through his warriors as they watched the enemy battleship drift helplessly through space. The humans fought like demons when cornered, using every trick and dirty tactic they could think of. Combined with Ravak coordination and discipline, they were proving to be a devastating combination. The consortium admiral realized his forces were losing the initiative. These primitive species were supposed to be easy targets, not a serious military threat. He ordered his remaining ships to focus all fire on the human vessels. Hoping to break the alliance by eliminating the weaker partner, Marcus saw the enemy formation shift and knew what they were planning. All human ships, evasive maneuvers. The consortium is targeting us specifically. But before the enemy could execute their plan, the Ravak fleet moved to intercept. War Prime Keth positioned his ships between the humans and the incoming fire, accepting damage to his own vessels to protect their newfound allies. The gesture surprised everyone on the human bridge. "Why are they taking hits for us?" Lisa asked as she watched Ravak shields flare under enemy weapons. Dr. Park looked up from her console with wonder in her eyes. "They're treating us like part of their hive. In Ravak culture, you protect the collective even at the cost of individual lives." The battle continued for hours, with both sides taking heavy losses. But gradually, the combined human Ravak forces began to gain the upper hand. Their cooperation had evolved from desperate necessity into something approaching true teamwork. Human creativity opened opportunities that Ravak discipline could exploit. Ravak coordination allowed human chaos to be channeled into devastating effectiveness. As the last consortium ships retreated into hyperspace, leaving behind the wreckage of nearly half their fleet, an eerie quiet settled over the Theta sector. Both human and Ravak vessels hung in space, their crews trying to process what had just happened. Marcus opened a direct channel to War Prime Keth. "Your people saved my ships. I will not forget that debt." "There is no debt between allies," Keth replied. "Today we learned that our species are stronger together than apart." Dr. Park had managed to establish a clearer link with Mindspeaker Thax through their halting conversation. She began to learn about the true scope of what they were facing. The consortium had not acted alone in attacking them. Intelligence suggested a galaxy-wide campaign was being planned against all species deemed too dangerous for the established order. "Captain, I think this was just the beginning," she reported. The consortium sees both our races as existential threats." "They won't stop with one defeat," Marcus nodded grimly. He had suspected as much. The older galactic powers had grown comfortable in their dominance, and the rapid expansion of both humanity and the Ravak Empire threatened their control. Today's battle had proven that neither race would be easy to eliminate, but it had also made them even bigger targets. Word of the battle began to spread through galactic communication networks within hours. The impossible had happened. The two most feared species in known space had fought side by side and won a major victory against overwhelming odds. Some races called it the beginning of a new dark age. Others whispered that perhaps the old order needed to change. On distant worlds, in council chambers and military headquarters, the galaxy's leaders began to realize that everything had shifted. The alliance between humans and Ravak was no longer a curiosity or a temporary convenience. It was a genuine partnership between two species that, when working together, might be unstoppable. The galaxy would never be the same. The neutral station Haven orbited a dead world on the edge of contested space, its gleaming corridors filled with beings from across the galaxy. Merchants, diplomats, and information brokers moved through the halls, but today all attention focused on the conference rooms where history was being made. For the first time in galactic memory, Humans and Ravak were meeting for formal peace negotiations. Ambassador David Torres adjusted his formal uniform as he walked toward the meeting chamber. Behind him, a small team of Earth's best diplomats carried datapads and translation devices. They had studied Ravak culture for months, trying to understand a species that thought with one mind across billions of bodies. The challenge seemed impossible, but the battle at Theta Sector had proven that cooperation was not only possible but necessary. In the parallel corridor, high-voice Mal moved with the fluid grace that marked all Ravak nobles. Her chitinous exoskeleton gleamed under the station's lights, and her forearms carried ceremonial weapons that showed her rank within the Empire. Behind her, a dozen subordinates shared her thoughts through the mental link that bound all their kind together. They could feel the anxiety and excitement of their people across the galaxy, all focused on this moment. The main conference room had been specially designed for this meeting. Human chairs faced Ravak resting platforms across a table made of neutral materials. Automated translation systems hummed quietly, ready to convert thoughts and words between two completely different forms of communication. David took his seat and looked across at the alien delegation. He had seen Ravak warriors in battle footage, but meeting them in person was different. They moved with a deadly grace that reminded him why so many species feared them. Yet he also remembered how they had protected human ships during the battle, taking damage to shield their newfound allies. High-voice Mal settled onto her platform and studied the human delegation. These creatures looked so fragile compared to her own people with their soft skin and weak bodies. But she had felt the fierce determination in their minds during the battle, the refusal to surrender even when facing certain death. That kind of strength could not be measured by physical appearance alone. "We gather today to discuss the future of our peoples," David began, his words carefully chosen. "The events at Theta Sector have shown that our species can work together when faced with a common threat." Mal's response came through the translation system as a series of harmonious tones. "The hive mind has considered your proposal. We see strength in the human spirit, a fire that burns bright in each individual. This interests us." The first hours of negotiations moved slowly as both sides explored the boundaries of what might be possible. Humans valued individual freedom and the right to make choices, while Ravak society was built on collective consciousness and shared purpose. Finding common ground seemed impossible until Dr. Lisa Park made a crucial observation. "Both our species share one fundamental drive," she said, addressing the room. "We protect our young above all else. Humans will fight to the death to defend their children. Ravak consider the entire hive to be their offspring." The statement caused a stir among the Ravak delegation. Mind Speaker Thax, who had joined the negotiations through a communication link, projected thoughts of agreement. The concept of protecting the next generation was indeed something both species understood completely. Outside the conference room, the galaxy watched and worried. News networks broadcast constant updates about the negotiations, while military forces on dozens of worlds prepared for various scenarios. The consortium had issued statements condemning both species as threats to galactic peace, but their defeat at Theta Sector had shaken their credibility. On the industrial world of Forge Prime, FACTO, our Y workers stopped their shifts to watch news feeds about the talks. The Veltar Confederacy had been consortium members for centuries, but seeing their mighty fleet defeated by the Human Ravak Alliance made them question their allegiances. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy as older powers realized their dominance was no longer absolute. Back on Haven Station, the negotiations took a dramatic turn when intelligence reports arrived about consortium military buildups. The older races were not content to accept their defeat. Fleet movements suggested they were preparing for a massive campaign against both human and Ravak territories. David studied the tactical displays with growing alarm. "They're mobilizing everything. This isn't just about stopping our alliance anymore. They want to eliminate our species entirely." High-voice Mal felt the collective consciousness of her people surge with anger through their mental link. The consortium had declared war not just on the Ravak Empire, but on the very concept that younger races had the right to exist independently. This could not be tolerated. "The hive mind has reached a decision," she announced. "We will stand with humanity against this threat. Our peoples will be stronger together than apart." The formal signing of the Terran-Ravik Mutual Defense Treaty took place in the main assembly hall of Haven Station. Representatives from dozens of species watched as David Torres and High Voice Mal put their signatures on the historic document. The treaty established not just military cooperation, but cultural and scientific exchange between their peoples. As news of the treaty spread through galactic communication networks, reactions were swift and dramatic. Some species called it the end of civilization as they knew it. Others saw it as the beginning of a new era where younger races could challenge the established order. Several smaller civilizations immediately requested protection from the new alliance, while others declared their neutrality in the coming conflict. The consortium's response was predictably hostile. Within hours of the treaty signing, they issued an ultimatum to all member species. Any civilization that provided aid or comfort to the Human-Ravik alliance would face immediate sanctions and possible military action. The galaxy was being forced to choose sides in a conflict that would reshape the balance of power for generations to come. On Earth, crowds gathered in major cities to watch the treaty ceremony. Children who had grown up hearing stories about the terrifying Ravik Empire now saw them as protectors and allies. The psychological shift was enormous. Humanity was no longer alone in facing the dangers of the galaxy. Similarly, on Ravik worlds throughout their empire, the hive mind buzzed with new possibilities. Humans brought innovation and adaptability that could strengthen the collective in ways they had never imagined. The rigid hierarchies that had defined Ravik society for millennia began to show cracks as individual creativity was recognized as a valuable asset. War Prime Keth, who had been promoted after the victory at Theta Sector, felt the changes flowing through his consciousness. The humans had taught his people that sometimes the best plans came from unexpected directions. Their chaotic energy was becoming part of the hive mind itself, creating new patterns of thought and action. The treaty also established joint research projects and cultural exchange programs. Human scientists would work alongside Ravik bioengineers to develop new technologies. Ravik efficiency would be combined with human innovation to create solutions neither species could achieve alone, but even as celebrations continued on Haven Station, military commanders from both species were already planning for the war they knew was coming. The consortium would not accept this challenge to their authority without a fight. Intelligence suggested that ancient weapons were being activated, calling upon technologies that had not been used for thousands of years. The alliance had been born in the fire of battle, strengthened through negotiation and diplomacy, and now faced its greatest test. The galaxy held its breath, waiting to see whether the partnership between humanity and the Ravik Empire would survive what was coming next. The Meridian Cluster hung like a jewel in space, its 7 star systems connected by ancient trade routes that had carried commerce for millennia. Now those same routes carried the largest military fleet ever assembled as the consortium launched Operation Cleanup with devastating force. Nearly 300 warships from 12 different species converged on the cluster. Determined to crush the Human-Ravik alliance before it could grow stronger, Admiral Sophie Chun stood on the bridge of the human flagship Vengeance, watching the enemy fleet deploy across her tactical displays. She had been given command of the Joint Defense Force, a responsibility that would have been unthinkable just months earlier. Beside her, Battle Prime Vorth monitored the same data through his neural interface, his consciousness linked to every Ravik vessel in their combined fleet. "They're trying to overwhelm us with numbers," Sophie observed, studying the enemy formation. The consortium forces were arranging themselves in the classic hammer and anvil pattern, designed to crush opponents between 2 unstoppable walls of firepower. Vorth's response came through both speakers and direct mental contact with nearby Ravik crew members. "Their commanders think in old patterns. They expect us to meet them in traditional battle formation." Sophie smiled grimly. Traditional tactics were exactly what they would not be using today. The Alliance had spent months developing new combat doctrines that combined human unpredictability with Ravak coordination. The enemy was about to learn why conventional wisdom no longer applied in galactic warfare. The Consortium Admiral, a proud Xanthari named High Commander Ultron, felt confident as his massive fleet moved into position. His forces outnumbered the Alliance ships by more than 2-1, and his crews had centuries of experience in galactic warfare. These upstart species had gotten lucky at Theta Sector, but luck would not save them against such overwhelming force. All ships prepare to engage, Ultron commanded. Show these primitives what happens when they challenge the established order. But as the Consortium fleet advanced, something unexpected happened. Instead of forming up to meet them head-on, the Alliance ships scattered like leaves in a hurricane. Human vessels darted between the larger Consortium formations while Ravak ships provided covering fire with surgical precision. The careful enemy formation began to unravel as they tried to target opponents who refused to stay in one place. Captain Tom Bradley piloted his human destroyer through a gap between two enemy battleships, his crew working frantically to avoid the massive plasma beams that lit up space around them. Behind him, a Ravak heavy cruiser moved into position to exploit the opening he had created, its weapons targeting the vulnerable engine sections of the enemy vessels. The battle quickly descended into chaos, as traditional formation flying became impossible. Human ships used their superior maneuverability to strike at weak points and then disappear before the enemy could respond. Ravak vessels coordinated their attacks through their shared consciousness, ensuring that every strike hit at exactly the right moment to cause maximum damage. Dr. Lisa Park worked at her science station aboard the Vengeance, coordinating intelligence between human and Ravak forces. The data flowed both ways through improved translation systems, allowing commanders from both species to share tactical information in real time. She watched as Battle Prime Vorth processed dozens of different data streams simultaneously, his enhanced mind tracking every ship in the battle. The enemy is trying to reform their lines, Lisa reported. They're pulling back to regroup. Sophie nodded and opened a channel to all Alliance ships. All units, prepare for Phoenix formation. Show them what we've learned. The Phoenix formation was something entirely new in galactic warfare. Human ships would create apparent chaos while Ravak vessels used their coordination to turn that chaos into a devastating weapon. From the outside, it looked like random violence. In reality, every move was calculated to support the overall strategy. Hi. Commander Ultron watched in growing frustration as his superior numbers failed to produce the expected results. His ships were taking heavy damage while struggling to hit targets that seemed to predict their every move. The Alliance forces fought like a single organism with the creativity of a dozen different minds. How are they coordinating so effectively? Demanded his tactical officer, a nervous Veltar named Sector Prime Clicks. Ultron had no answer. The intelligence reports had suggested that humans and Ravak were too different to work together effectively. Instead, he was seeing a level of cooperation that surpassed even his own experienced crews. The turning point came when a combined human Ravak assault team managed to break through the Consortium center. Captain Tom's destroyer squadron had created a gap in the enemy formation by executing a series of impossible maneuvers that drew fire away from their allies. The Ravak heavy cruisers then punched through that gap with coordinated volleys that overwhelmed the enemy shields. War Prime Keth led the breakthrough assault, his consciousness linked to every warrior under his command. The humans had taught his people that sometimes the best strategy was no strategy at all. By abandoning their rigid tactical doctrine and embracing controlled chaos, the Ravak had become far more dangerous than their enemies could handle. The battle raged for hours as the Consortium forces slowly realized they were losing. Their superior numbers meant nothing when they could not bring their weapons to bear effectively. The Alliance ships moved through their formations like predators hunting prey, striking at weak points and disappearing before retaliation could arrive. Mindspeaker Thax coordinated the mental link between Ravak vessels while maintaining communication with human commanders. He could feel the excitement and determination flowing through both species as they fought for their survival. The humans brought innovation and adaptability that enhanced the collective consciousness, while Ravak discipline gave structure to human creativity. As the enemy fleet began to retreat, Admiral Sophie Chun made a crucial decision. Instead of letting them escape to regroup, she ordered a full pursuit. The Alliance forces chased the fleeing consortium ships across 3 star systems, harassing them at every turn and preventing any attempt to reform their battle lines. The running battle that followed became known as the Meridian Chase. For 6 days, Alliance forces pursued the retreating consortium fleet, striking at stragglers and preventing any coordinated counterattack. Human stealth ships would identify targets, while Ravak heavy units delivered the killing blows. The cooperation had evolved beyond simple tactical coordination into something approaching telepathic unity. When the surviving consortium ships finally reached the safety of their border fortresses, they had lost nearly 60% of their fleet. More importantly, they had lost their reputation for invincibility. News of the defeat spread through galactic communication networks within hours, causing shock waves that reached every corner of known space on dozens of worlds. Species that had served the consortium for centuries began to question their allegiances. The Alliance had proven that the old order could be challenged and defeated. Younger races that had been suppressed for generations started to speak of independence and self-determination. High Commander Ultron faced a board of inquiry on the consortium capital world, trying to explain how his massive fleet had been outfought by a force half its size. The traditional tactics that had worked for millennia had proven useless against enemies who refused to play by established rules. "They fight like animals," he protested to the council. "There is no honor in their methods, no respect for proper warfare." The council members exchanged glances filled with worry. If honor and proper warfare could not defeat the Alliance, then perhaps their entire civilization was built on outdated foundations. The defeat at Meridian had shattered more than just military confidence. It had broken the psychological dominance that the consortium had maintained for thousands of years. Back in the Meridian cluster, Alliance forces began the process of securing their new territory. Human engineers worked alongside Ravak construction crews to build fortified positions that could serve as stepping stones for future operations. The victory had given them not just a tactical advantage but a strategic foothold in the heart of consortium space. The galaxy was beginning to realize that the partnership between humanity and the Ravak Empire was not a temporary convenience born of desperation. It was a fundamental shift in the balance of power that would reshape interstellar politics for generations to come. The old order was crumbling and something new was rising to take its place. The fortress world of Sanctum Prime had stood unconquered for over 3,000 years, its massive defense stations and planetary shields protecting the heart of consortium power. Ancient weapons that had not fired in centuries now powered up as the Alliance fleet approached, their energy signatures blazing across sensor displays like angry stars. This would be the final battle, the moment that decided whether the old galactic order would survive or fall to the new partnership between humanity and the Ravak Empire. General Alex Stone stood in the command center of the Alliance flagship. Unity surrounded by holographic displays that showed the greatest military force either species had ever assembled. Beside him, War Supreme Zax monitored the same data through his neural implants, his consciousness linked to every Ravak vessel. In their combined armada, 6 months of joint operations had forged them into a perfect team, human intuition balanced by Ravak precision. "The orbital defense platforms are coming online," reported Captain Sarah Kim from her tactical station. "I'm reading energy signatures that match nothing in our databases." Alex nodded grimly. Intelligence had warned them that the consortium would use ancient technologies for this final confrontation. Weapons and defenses that had been sealed away since the last great galactic war were being activated to protect their capital. The enemy was fighting for their very existence now, War Supreme Zax felt, the collective consciousness of his people flowing through his mind like a vast river. Every Ravak warrior in the fleet shared their determination and purpose. their thoughts focused on the battle ahead. The humans had taught them new ways of fighting, but this assault would test everything they had learned together. "The humans are ready," Zax confirmed, his words translated into speech for the mixed species command. "Crew. Their Marines have been training with our assault castes for months. Today they fight as one force." The planetary defenses of Sanctum Prime stretched across 3 orbital shells, each one more deadly than the last. The outer ring consisted of automated weapon platforms that could track and destroy thousands of targets simultaneously. The middle ring held manned stations with heavy particle beams and quantum torpedoes. The inner ring protected the planet itself with shield generators that could withstand direct hits from capital ship weapons. Admiral Sophie Chun commanded the Alliance fleet's left wing, her ships arranged in the fluid formations that had proven so effective at Meridian. The Phoenix Doctrine had evolved even further during their campaign across Consortium space. Now human and Ravak vessels moved together like a single organism, each ship knowing exactly where its companions would be. At every moment, the first assault wave hit the outer defense ring like a hammer striking crystal. Alliance fighters and bombers swarmed between the automated platforms while capital ships provided covering fire. Human pilots used their creativity to find gaps in the defensive patterns while Ravak squadrons exploited those openings with surgical precision. Captain Tom Bradley led his fighter squadron through a maze of laser fire and exploding debris. His wing included both human and Ravak pilots, their different fighting styles complementing each other perfectly. The humans would create chaos and confusion while the Ravak would capitalize on every opportunity with deadly efficiency. Mindspeaker. Thax coordinated the mental link between all Ravak forces while maintaining communication with human commanders. The battle data flowed through both species like a shared bloodstream, allowing instant coordination across the entire fleet. He could feel the excitement and determination of the human pilots mixing with the focused purpose of his own people. The second wave targeted the middle defense ring with a massive coordinated assault. Human boarding parties launched from stealth ships while Ravak heavy cruisers provided fire support. The defenders had expected traditional siege tactics, but the Alliance forces used their trademark combination of chaos and precision to overwhelm carefully planned defenses. War Prime Keth led the most dangerous mission of all, a direct assault on the command station that controlled the planetary shields. His strike force included both Ravak warriors and human marines. Their different capabilities merged into a devastating combination. The humans would create diversions and confusion while the Ravak would strike at critical systems with methodical efficiency. The interior of the command station became a battlefield, as Alliance forces fought their way through corridors filled with automated defenses and desperate Consortium troops. Human Marines used their adaptability to overcome unexpected obstacles, while Ravak warriors provided the discipline and coordination needed to maintain the assault's momentum. Dr. Lisa Park worked frantically at her science station, trying to crack the ancient codes that protected the station's computer systems. The technology was older than human civilization, but she had learned to think like both species during their months of cooperation. Human intuition combined with Ravak logic to find solutions that neither could achieve alone. "I'm in," she announced, as the shield control systems finally accepted her override codes. "Planetary defenses are dropping in 30 seconds. The moment the shields failed, the Alliance fleet struck at Sanctum Prime itself. The planet's surface was covered with military installations and government buildings that had ruled the galaxy for millennia. Now they faced destruction from weapons that combined human innovation with Ravak engineering. High Counselor Mordek watched from his command bunker as the Alliance forces landed on his world. His ancient civilization was crumbling before his eyes, destroyed by species that the Consortium had dismissed as primitive threats. The carefully maintained order that had lasted for thousands of years was coming to an end. "How could we have been so wrong about them?" asked Gazade, a young Veltar who had never seen the Consortium lose a major battle. Mordek had no answer. The intelligence reports had suggested that humans and Ravak were too different to maintain an effective alliance. Instead, Their differences had become their greatest strength, allowing them to overcome every challenge through adaptation and cooperation. The final assault on the planetary capital demonstrated the full evolution of human-Ravak cooperation. Joint strike teams moved through the city like a coordinated organism, each unit supporting the others in perfect harmony. Human creativity. Open paths that Ravak discipline could exploit, while Ravak coordination allowed human chaos to be channeled into devastating effectiveness. General Alex Stone and War Supreme Zax led the final attack on the Consortium Council chambers, their forces having fought side by side through months of campaigning. They moved together with the understanding that came from shared struggle, their different species united by common purpose and mutual respect. The surrender ceremony took place in the Great Hall where the Consortium had ruled for millennia. High Counselor Morduk signed the documents that formally ended their dominance over galactic affairs. The old order was finished and a new era was beginning, but the Alliance leaders showed wisdom in victory. Instead of imposing their will through force, they established a new form of galactic government based on cooperation and mutual respect. Species that had been suppressed for centuries were given voices in the new council. The galaxy would be ruled by consensus rather than domination. The first joint colony world was established 6 months later, a testament to how far both species had come. Human families and Ravak broods lived side by side, their children learning to see difference as strength rather than threat. The playground laughter of human kids mixed with the harmonious songs of young Ravak, creating a sound that had never been heard before in the galaxy. Alex Stone walked through the colony's central plaza, watching children from both species play together without fear or suspicion. A human girl was teaching a group of young Ravak how to play catch, while they showed her how to join their mental games. The future was being born in their innocent cooperation. "They make it look so easy," observed War Supreme Zax as he joined the human general. "Perhaps our children will succeed where we struggled." Alex nodded, watching as the youngsters switched seamlessly between individual and group activities. They're growing up together. To them, this alliance isn't something strange or difficult. It's just the way things are. The galaxy had learned its greatest lesson from the partnership between humanity and the Ravak Empire. The most dangerous thing was not a single predator, no matter how fierce. The most dangerous thing was two predators who learned to hunt as one, combining their strengths while covering each other's weaknesses. News of the colony spread throughout known space, inspiring other species to seek their own partnerships and alliances. The rigid hierarchies that had defined galactic civilization for millennia began to crumble as younger races demanded their place in the new order. The transformation was not without challenges. Old prejudices died hard, and there were those who resented the changes that swept across their worlds. But the children growing up in the joint colonies became ambassadors for a new way of thinking, showing by example that cooperation was stronger than competition. As Alex watched the sunset paint the alien sky in brilliant colors, he reflected on how far they had all come. The species that had once been the galaxy's greatest fear had become its greatest hope, proving that even the most unlikely partnerships could change the course of history. The galaxy would never be the same, and that was exactly as it should be.